Without such changes in relative prices, innovation on its own will not deliver the changes we need in the balance of economic inputs. Take the example of energy efficiency. We can certainly make great gains through innovation, but as each unit of energy input produces more output, this makes energy more useful relative to other inputs, so increasing demand for it. What is known as so-called rebound effect. Considered economy-wide, this effect is sufficiently strong that energy efficiency policies will not significantly affect an economy's use of energy in the medium term, even whilst increasing efficiency. The story holds for other resources too. If we are going to send the right economic signals, we will certainly have to pursue fiscal policy makers to move beyond the rising revenue, to use their tools, to set another direction for our economic development. Of course, this is an issue where subsidiarity will be quoted, but it is also one where many member states already have excellent experience. We have to look at the subsidiarity angle too, because environmentally harmful subsidies hinder investments in clean and green technologies and lock on inefficient technologies and business structures. Of course, subsidies are usually there for good social and economic reasons, but we need to ensure that they are also phased out when those reasons disappear. We already saw the G20 leaders agree last year to phase out inefficient fossil fuels subsidies. But there are many more opportunities, particularly in the fields of agriculture, fisheries, and forests. Such changes in relative prices would drive greater innovation. And on the demand side, the most direct influence we have is through green public procurement. Public procurement accounts for 17% of GDP in Europe. A recent study showed us that if all public authorities across the European Union were to require more energy-efficient computers, the effect would save 830,000 tons of CO2. And if they were all to opt for water-efficient toilets and taps in public buildings, they would reduce water consumption by 200 million cubic meters. It is not easy to make this kind of calculations, but some has to do it, if we are to really measure where we can have greatest impact. Last week, I launched a new handbook on life cycle assessment, which will help businesses, public authorities, and policymakers evaluate more accurately the environmental impacts of their activities. The hammer or price example I gave you at the beginning is a classic one. In fact, the moment then the question was posed by Michael Pollan, an American professor of journalism, the blogosphere and the Twitterverse lit up as scientists and economists over the world set about calculating and debating relative carbon footprints. If you then consider the thousands of other transport and dietary options we choose every day, then it is clear that we have to use relative pricing to change behavior. In the end, the hammer was harpooned by rising oil prices. If nothing changes consumer habits like prices, then nothing induces innovation like changing market conditions. And I'm not only talking about technological innovation. Eco-innovation is also about new business models. It's about looking at the whole business of businesses and applying a new way of thinking. As waste has become more valuable, we have seen new technologies applied to treating it, but also innovative markets developing to buy and sell it. In the United Kingdom, an initiative with the not very catchy title of the National Industrial Synopsis Program, has created a market which puts together those producing waste with those who can use it and are willing to pay the most for it. By turning pastry waste into electricity, converting fatty acids into biodiesel, and so on, they estimate that the whole program has boosted the UK economy by as much as 3 billion euros. In some cases, the kind of changes we need cost virtually nothing. Behavior economists have shown us that there are ways to do it which we would barely register. Charging 10 cents for plastic bags at supermarkets has encouraged people to reuse bags. Putting smart energy meters in houses which go from red to green at a certain threshold encourages people to switch off, unplug, turn down. Simple but effective. Perhaps it is because I'm an economist, not a lawyer, that I see more hope in changing behavior through enterprise, markets and prices, than through environmental legislation and sanctions, even it is clear that we need both. That is more than obvious to all of us living in the times of market failures. There is a saying that what you don't measure, you don't achieve. And one of the most pressing objectives for me will be to develop good indicators for resource efficiency. Policymakers at all levels will need the right indicators and targets if we are to induce the right changes. I know that the Lisbon Council has been very active in this already. Your president, Paul Hofheinz, was a panelist at the Beyond GDP conference the Commission organized in 2007. And more recently, you have been working on proposing indicators for EU 2020 and the European Human Capital Index. We all need to carry on this work. We will never get a perfect indicator, but look me in the eye and tell me that GDP is a perfect indicator. What we need are practical and pragmatic indicators that will motivate policy changes. So the answer, the question I asked at the beginning, it isn't enough just to care, but it helps. And if we are able to make it possible, easier, and even cool to care, then we stand a real chance of decoupling our economic growth from our resource use, of becoming the most resource-efficient region of the world. I like to think that Jean-Jacques Rousseau would have understood the point I'm trying to make. In the social contract, he developed a theory about the best way in which to set up a political community in the face of the problems of commercial society. He said that the sovereign, having no force other than the legislative power, acts only by means of the laws. And the laws, being solely the authentic acts of the general will, the sovereign cannot act unless he has the support of the people. The last part of the sentence is not the quote, but I translate it from the language of that century that you can understand. Today's policy makers must use their legislative power to engage and guide the wider society, as it is only by changing our collective behavior that we will achieve sustainable growth. I do believe that our responsibility is much higher than ever before. Thank you.